Okay. Okay, is it on? Okay, great. So we're going to start, and people are going to dribble in. If you didn't sign your name, would you go over there and put it down? Somebody asked what we're going to do with the list, and I said we're going to sell it and make a lot of money for Plymouth. So assume you're going to be on, you're going to get lots and lots of awful mail. Okay, so I'm Sonia Cairns. I'm part of the Campus Task Force, and there are several people here who are part of our hosting team. Johanna Schuessler, Brian Ziska, Louder? Okay, Peg Burke, Jane is here, Tom Anderson. Who else? Oh, and from our first year, John, sitting right here, who was one of the founding members of the Campus Task Force. So we're thrilled you're here. And Peter, like our chair from the first year, so soon we forget. I am really sorry about that. We're really happy you're here. And this morning, we're going to be sharing information about the first year of the Campus Task Force in '22, and then we're going to look forward to where we're headed this year. We hope you're going to help us shape where we're headed. And then for about the last half of this short meeting, Johanna is going to lead us in some small group discussion to model the way we want to run conversations during this program year. So I want to stop, and Brian, who was very central to our work during the first year, is going to give you a short sense of what we were doing then.
Thank you. I've got some notes because it's hard to talk about a year's worth of work and summarize it in a couple minutes. And plus, people said some pretty good things, and I want to capture that. So the Deacons chartered the task force in late 2021. So from January 22 to January 23 was when the work happened. And initially it started, we did a lot of work on understanding the history of the land, and we wanted to understand our place better. And it was thought that we would look at practical issues about building parking lots. I mean, we're mostly either building or parking lot here. I mean, pretty much. And then we would also look at it was always forward-looking in terms of looking at kind of what does it mean to us? What does this place mean to us? What does our building represent for us? And also, what opportunity does it represent? And so this group got together. It was a very diverse group, about 17 people, old, young, diversity of opinion. It was really a nice mixture of people. And it really went from being very practical. As I was rereading minutes, you could see how as the months went on, it became less about building specific things and more about the opportunity that the building represented in terms of Plymouth being a catalyst for change in the community. And when I say community, I mean our neighborhood, I mean our larger neighborhood, our city, and also then the change we could make in the world. And it came from a place of abundance, because it represents a lot of abundance. If you're in this neighborhood and you see Plymouth, you think, we stand out. But yet not a lot of people know who we are. And so, but it's a very prominent place in the neighborhood. And so we concluded that this was an opportunity for us to look forward and use this work as a way for our church to live out its purposes, which we have over there, the within, the among, and beyond. And that's a process that we followed. It was internal spiritual growth. It was growth together as a community, in which case the task force grew together. And through a lot of humility, we challenged each other and listened to each other, and hearts were changed. And it was quite an important experience. And then that would lead to us doing what Plymouth has done for a long time, and that is repair systemic injustices in the world. And so justice became a very important part of it. And not only about what we could do for other people, but also how we would benefit in return for the work that we did. And we came up with recommendations. And by the way, this report it's on the Plymouth website. I think it's under the Growth Task Force for some reason, but it's under governance, and you can look at it. But we came up with recommendations that were bold statements of what is possible through spiritual growth and relationships based on covenant that we have with each other and also outside of our walls. So that's a really short summary, but very much spiritual in nature, very much a process of discernment among all of us here at Plymouth in terms of how we want to envision this future. And we'll be spending a lot of time this year talking to everyone and having people talk to us about this work and how they feel about the importance of it and the direction of it and all that. Good. Okay? Second?
Thank you. So following that year of work, you'll remember that last year the deacons hosted these wonderful conversations about how values relate to our financial and more and many significant issues here at Plymouth. Then the deacons came back to us. We kind of wondered where the report had gone, and our friends, the deacons, asked us if we would go through the experience that we had with the membership. And they were intrigued. They told us that we changed our way of thinking during the process and became very grounded in spiritual thinking that for some of us felt very new and very different from the way conversations often go at Plymouth, which is kind of funny given that we're a church and we're a spiritual place. But it is what we've taken on from them. And so part of what we've been realizing is that there are so many, or there are a few central existential questions that we're all thinking about. And there are so many reasons to be hopeful about the future of Plymouth, and we wanted to sponsor conversations that will help us do that thinking together. A point following up on what Brian was saying about the purposes, the within, the among, and beyond, one of the things we came to believe is that we can't do anything about potential changing in the neighborhood, whatever we call that, unless we ourselves are going through conversations together that are very much based on our own selves as individuals and the way we all converse together and act together and make decisions together. So as we go into the fall conversations, the first couple of months are going to be very much grounded in the within idea, and we're very excited about getting started on those. Three big questions we've asked ourselves. I'm going to read them. What is God? We can call it God, the Spirit, whatever works for you. What is God calling us to be at this moment of time, in this building, in this neighborhood? 2, how might we live more deeply into the three purposes of our church? And 3, how can we together and in new ways imagine and create a bold future and shared actionable vision? We're very excited about that and believe that this focus on the within in the beginning is going to really ground us in how do we think beyond how we are as individuals and small groups. So this morning starts a series of conversations. They will go throughout the next program year. You're going to get a lot of Friday email communications. Brian and one of our other members, Barb Iverson, have become our communicators and are going to keep not only telling you what's coming up, but we want to keep reporting what are we hearing so that we have an ongoing conversation with the congregation, even those who are not coming to our meetings. We want them to hear what are we hearing from one another. So we are ready to go, and Johanna, this is what we really want to focus on, and think of this as kind of practicing the way we might have a conversation at one of our next events.
All right, thanks, Sonia. So yeah, we're hoping to use the rest of our time together, and we're planning to take us until about 10:50, so folks can move on to your next service or wherever you need to be. But we're hoping to use the rest of our time together to sort of model what these conversations throughout the next program year might be like. So this is going to be a conversation, and our room right now is maybe set up for a lecture. So we might have to get a little creative with perhaps moving chairs or just like carving out some space for ourselves to do this. But one of the things that I'd like to say first is that in these conversations, one of the reasons that we're doing this, and I think that Sonia and Brian kind of both referred to this, is we're focused on our purposes within, among, and beyond. And conversation can really invite us into the within and the among space. Sometimes when I'm having a conversation, I notice that my intentions might be different depending on who I'm talking to or what I'm talking about. And we're hopeful that in these conversations, that they might feel like opportunities to listen, for you to speak from your understanding and from your experience without trying to move someone else. And as you're listening in these conversations, as you're listening to your conversation partner or to the group, that you are listening in an open-hearted way, and that you're noticing and you're listening for difference. We don't all have to agree, and sometimes that can make us uncomfortable. So just trying to enter into this space of listening, of learning, of being together, and starting to practice how to listen to each other and how to talk to each other. So my first invitation for you is one that Seth offered earlier if you were in the 9 o'clock service, which is to take a deep breath together. A couple things are happening, right? Hopefully you're remembering that you're alive in your body. Can we do that one more time? One inhale and exhale together. I don't know if you could hear that, your own breath, but also the breath of our siblings here gathered in the space. Okay, so the next invitation is to find a conversation partner. Somebody nearby. I'd like to get us into pairs, if we can. So somebody near you who you could turn to have a conversation with. So maybe, Sonia and Brian, can you help people find buddies if this is challenging? I am socially introverted and find this challenging. So Sonia and Brian will circulate. We do, yep. There will be a question. So right now we're just getting into our buddies. And if folks, let's raise your hand if you are buddyless at this moment, if you are without a conversation partner. Okay, if you do not have a conversation partner yet, please raise your hand and we will find you and make sure that you have a conversation partner. Okay, I'm seeing it. It looks like we've got pairs or a couple trios. That's good too. Trios, your mathematical calculations will just need to be a little different, and that's okay. We can navigate these waters together. Okay, so the next thing, I do have a question that I'm going to ask you to engage on, but before I get there, I'm going to ask you to first, in your groups, identify. So there will be 2 roles in these conversations, and there will be a role of sharer. So that is the person who will be sharing. And then there is the role of listener. And a couple guidelines here. So this is less dialogue than listening and sharing practice. So sharers, when you are sharing, when you're responding to the question that you don't know what it is yet, but I will promise I will tell you. You will be sharing from your heart. You're not trying to convince folks, and it doesn't have to be a doctoral thesis. It can be kind of what you're thinking in the moment about this question. Listeners, your job is to listen to the sharer, listen with your heart, right? Sometimes we might listen to respond, and I'm going to encourage you to listen to understand. What is the sharer sharing with you that might be new, something that you haven't heard before, something different? Something similar. Notice where you feel resonance in your body or where you feel, dissonance in your body, and then just be with that. Trust that it's okay. At some point, we will switch roles, and somebody else, a former listener, will be a sharer. The sharer will become the listener. If you're in trios, somebody will be doing the same thing while other people switch. I will guide you through this process. Okay, so in your pairs or trios right now, do a brief negotiation. Who is going to be the first sharer? And then raise your hand if you are going to share first. Okay, I see some hands. Good. And you might have to rock, paper, scissors for it. All right, sharers are identified. Okay, sharers, we're going to take a pledge. Yep, we got 3 here. Oh, good, all are welcome. Okay, folks who are sharing first. Folks who are sharing first, repeat after me. While I am sharing, I will share from my heart. Okay, listeners, repeat after me. While I am listening, I will listen from my heart. Okay, beautiful. All right, friends, the question that I'm going to ask you to share about and listen on is this. It's a 2-part question. Okay, right. I trust you. Also, this is an invitation. Friends, who are Plymouth's neighbors? Who are Plymouth's neighbors? Why might Plymouth seek to strengthen our relationship with them? Why might Plymouth seek to build our relationship with them? Who are Plymouth's neighbors, and why might we seek to be in relationship with them? There it is. Okay. I'm going to keep a little time. Sharers will have 5 minutes to share on this question. Who are Plymouth's neighbors? Why might we seek to be in relationship with them? 5 minutes. Please share and listen. All right, friends. I'm going to slowly invite you to wrap up your thoughts, because that was 5 minutes. Put it down. Yeah, is it because I'm too loud or because I'm too quiet? Because you can't hear me. Can you hear me now? Ooh, okay, it's good. Thank you. I can hear me too. Whew. It's good to get the visual cues on the audio information. Thank you. Okay, friends, that was 5 minutes. And so now we're going to take another 5 minutes and we're going to switch roles. I recognize that my instructions may have been unclear, and I apologize for that. So that's okay. We're going to switch. We're going to take another 5 minutes. We're going to continue to dive into the same questions. Who are Plymouth's neighbors? Why might we want to be in relationship with them? If you were in so the invitation now is to switch roles. If you were in a group where somebody was the primary sharer and somebody was the primary listener, please switch. If you were in a group that answered that invitation to share and listen in a different way, just I will encourage you, if you have been sharing less, I will encourage you to share a little bit more. Share your wisdom on this topic of who are Plymouth's neighbors. And if you have been somebody who was sharing more, then I invite you to step back and listen more. Before we do that, we're going to repeat our pledges to each other. So sharers, please repeat after me. While I am sharing, I will share from my heart. Beautiful, thank you. Listeners, repeat after me. While I am listening, I will listen from my heart. All right, friends, so we will take another 5 minutes to either switch or kind of shift your orientation to the sharing and listening relationship, to engage on the questions: who are Plymouth's neighbors? Why might we seek to be in relationship with them? 5 minutes. Great. Okay, this is your 5-minute friendly reminder to begin to wrap up your conversations, which it sounds like are good. Oh, good, I have some eye contact. Oh, still not loud enough. Woo. Okay, we're gonna do a teacher trick, which I think is something like, if you can hear me, clap 1 time. If you can hear me, clap 2 times. Hallelujah, teachers, you really are onto something. I have never done that before, and it is incredibly effective. Wow, fantastic, thank you. Thank you. It is, as a facilitator, it is always painful to have to interrupt you. I could not only see and hear, but I could also feel the engagement in the room. I witnessed you interacting with each other and making connections, and I want to thank you for that. Would you please, before we transition into the next portion, just turn to your discussion partner and indicate your gratitude with a bow or with saying thank you or just a look in the eye, but just expressing some gratitude for that vulnerability and honesty and connection. Thank you. Sweet, a high five, that'll work? Yes. Okay. All right, please don't make me do the clapping thing again. That was too, but I will. All right, thank you. Thank you for that. So now we're gonna do a little bit of, so you got the opportunity to share with your partners, your sharing groups, and now we're gonna take just a few minutes. It will feel very, very brief because it will be brief. We don't have a lot of time, but I would like to hear from a few folks. I would like to invite you to share what is something new that you learned from your partner in your conversation. And the way that we will do this is, if you have something you would like to share, please raise your hand, and we have a couple microphone folks. Jane and Jean will be sending the microphones along so that everyone can benefit from what is something new that you learned in your conversation. An aha moment. Ooh, I see some hands. All right, there's one. Yeah, Seth.
I learned from my friends here, Heiko brought up something that I think was really essential to name, of neighbors being other churches, and not just the people in the community, but churches being an essential part of that neighbors. And then Phoebe talked about health and healthy communities, and that was an important thing for me to hear, to be named, about not just liking or doing, but healthy.
Thank you for sharing those new ideas. Yeah, go ahead.
Something that I learned but heightened my awareness is that I tend to be very practical, and my perception of the neighborhood was fairly narrow geography. Dwayne's perception is anyone we encounter without geographic restriction, which I appreciate that.
Thank you for sharing that. New learning. Yeah.
My wife's partner suggested that the neighborhood is inclusive. It's all that we know and don't know, really. But it is about finding relationship with the different parts of the neighborhood, how to do that.
Thank you for sharing that.
One of the things that David said to me, which was most meaningful was the importance of building relationships. And one of the things he said is, when we do prayers for the people, it tells him something about that person who is making that prayer. And that's a whole different way for me to be thinking about that. And I appreciate that comment so much.
Thank you for sharing that.
So John and I have both been here for a long time, but we have not worked together. So I got to know John better than I ever have. And that was quite wonderful. He's a poetic speaker and a great smiler. John's one of the few people here bigger than I am, and I find that a little bit imposing, frankly. And so it gave me a chance to know his warmth. And John also said that if when George Floyd was killed, if you said, "That's my neighborhood, something's wrong here," then you're a neighbor of ours. That big a group.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you, too, for bringing up that these new learnings could just be like, I met someone I haven't talked to before, so thank you. Or talk to somebody, learn something new about a human. Thank you. Oh, sorry, thank you. Over here first. No, it's just on.
Oh, okay. The energy and enthusiasm that my partner and I both experienced around this issue tells me that we have a lot to offer. And I'm so glad that we're having these conversations, because we came up with some great ideas.
I am so excited to hear that.
Yeah.
Please keep coming. Thank you. How about, I think we've got time for two more.
Well, John made a connection between Dwayne's sermon and that this is something that we're actually called to do as Christians.
Thank you, and special sneak preview for those of you attending the 11 o'clock service. Right? Bring it all together.
Peter and I both used the word struggle, and that people in the neighborhood, depending wherever you draw the circle, are often struggling, and that we ourselves struggle with how best to respond to the call that Dwayne talked about.
Yes. Friends, thank you so much. I trust that there are a lot of other new learnings, and we are going to hear one more. Yes. Because it's so good.
My partner, John, for whom I have a huge amount of respect for the involvement that he has in the neighborhood here, reminded me of how diverse this neighborhood is. We have a little bit of everything, including businesses, other churches, a wide variety of people living in the area that I know absolutely nothing about. We have 2 event centers. It's just amazing. And we have a lot to learn.
Beautiful. What a lovely sentiment on which to end the new learning wrap-up. Thank you. I can feel that there was learning that happened here today. Thank you for engaging in that and for sharing it with the group and for capturing it, Brian. I'm going to turn it over to Sonia now to kind of help wrap us up.
So one of the things I learned is that a group of people, I think there are 42 of us, give or take, can get a lot accomplished in a very short period of time. We've worried about that. Can you really do anything in an hour? And I think it's pretty wonderful. So I have one boring little thing. On the list, it looks like there are about 16 people, and there actually are 40-some people here. We would love to get your names. We're not going to bug you. We just want to know who's coming to these events, and we will not sell them, I promise you. So we have 2 questions. I mentioned the names of the people who are on this task force, and John, who is still on because he was on. We have 2 questions, and we'd like to take a few notes about this. One is, What would make you want to come to other programs like this? What would make you want to come to other programs like that? And that kind of assumes what would make other people want to come to programs like this. And secondly, what questions do you have about the work that we didn't answer? So we're going to take just a few minutes, and here's...
Also sharing stories that I think are energizing and important for everyone here.
And Brian, I want to make sure you heard that.
Yeah, that's building a community, those of us who are here, and also building community among those of us who are a part of Plymouth, and also sharing stories that can be motivating toward action.
Wonderful. Thank you. Just talk, that's okay.
Okay. We tend to be head people, and I heard you say many times how the task force part 1 was really a spiritual process and transformative for many of you. I think you may have shared this before in maybe a 10 o'clock forum, but I think, incorporating some of your stories about how you feel changed by this process would be helpful. It doesn't have to be just, another 10 o'clock forum, but to say how it was transformative as you lead us into these discussions.
Thanks. We've heard a lot of people in this church say that they really honor stories. And, you made that comment at the very beginning. And so we want to do more of that. I mean, I would say a slice of my story is that I came in thinking like a Plymouth person to that first year of work, and we were going to kick butt and we were going to do all these great things. And then we started deeply listening to one another, and we paused more, and there was more space, and we began to realize that something was happening among us that wouldn't have happened if we kept chattering and almost being competitive in who is the most brilliant idea for what we can do with the building. So we'll do more of that for sure. And we'll get John to be one of those people at some point. Yes.
I would really like to know more about the story of our neighborhood here, despite also agreeing that our neighborhood is more expansive than that. I think you all did gather some information about talking to people in our broader neighborhood. I'd love to know, what is the story of our neighborhood now that we could respond to, that we're a part of?
Thank you for that. And in the beginning, we did have something like 150 comments from neighbors with whom we talked. One of the things we're going to do is, knowing that we have many outreach groups in this church, many justice groups, I think they're called, and their roots are deep, and we all together are going to figure that out and begin hearing one another tell what we know and what we don't know, and what do we have to find out. And particularly in January, February, we're going to be doing much more on the neighboring, how to be neighbors, how to really be neighbors. So thank you.
Good lead in, Sonia. So when we meet our neighbors at home, we're in the yard at the same time and we say hi. We don't live here. So I want the how to, not the why to, why it's important. I want the how to meet your neighbors when you don't live where we're talking about the neighbors we want to meet. This is a perplexing thing to me. I don't know how to meet my neighbors besides patronizing businesses, but all my neighbors here aren't businesses. I want the how-to.
And thanks so much for that. I think we're going to teach one another. And just for example, we have a person in our congregation, E.J. Kelly, who has so many relationships with neighbors, it's mind-boggling. We're going to learn from one another and from neighbors, for sure. John?
I can't remember the question that you asked us, but one of the things that struck me was this feeling of invitation, feeling that we're invited to something. I told Tom when we first started talking that I've always felt welcomed here, and then what I heard Tom say was, well, he and I haven't really had a conversation until just a few minutes ago, and he described me as someone who was impulsive because of my size, and I think we need to think about how we, as a church, come across in our neighborhood. I've always felt welcomed, but I think we need to examine how we present ourselves to the rest of our neighborhood, and lean into this feeling of invitation, inviting others in, because it's not just implied. I'm a pretty gentle man, but I come across as impulsive because I'm a big guy, and so I think it's important to realize this is a big structure that says something different than what we may think it says to the rest of our neighborhood. So it's that feeling of invitation that's I'm trying to articulate.
That. And John, you were involved that first year in so many discussions about power or lack of power or perceived power. And this year we've been doing more of that. Do we realize that by virtue of being white, most of us, and belonging to this church, how do neighbors, how might a neighbor feel about that? We've heard from some of them how they feel about it, and they don't feel very good about it. So I love that you're raising it. We will continue. We're going to have one more question here, and then we want to end on time.
Is it me?
Yeah.
Okay. My comment is in direct response to your question, Sonia. What would make me want to continue to dialogue and be involved in meetings like this? And for me, part of that answer is knowing that something will come from it. I think many of us have been involved with wonderful things at Plymouth and dialogues and conversations, and reports have been generated, and sometimes things have not come from those. And I have been able to observe Brian involved with this process and other friends, and I know that is not at all the intention of this group. And knowing that is hugely motivating and makes me want to be very open with my time and input.
Thanks, Nancy. Thank you. That's just terrific to hear that. And one of our balancing acts has been, how do we be certain that we accomplish something during the next program year without having any predetermined outcomes? We as a group, year one, came up with some really good outcomes. Well, this is a new game. We, the members, are now going to have a whole bunch of programs together and hear one another. And yes, we want to have outcomes, but we don't know what they are. And let me just end by saying that we didn't say clearly enough, we maybe didn't even say it at all, that every month is going to have a theme. Every month, like September, is going to be grounded in within. And there are going to be different venues. And they're going to be, if not replicas of one another, they're going to be on the same theme. So there will be a program like this. There will be a conversation at Wednesday Mingle. There will be a Zoom. We haven't created all of those kinds of venues, but we're not going to drown you. We're just going to invite you per month. Here are the things that are happening. You're going to see a lot of communications because of Brian and Barb and sometime our new communications person. So again, thank you. And I want to say a special thanks to Hiko and Phoebe. We're going to try like crazy to have young, older, all the way up, and to try and find people who don't necessarily feel that they've been heard. And we want to say, yes, we want to hear you. And so thank you. Thank you very, very much for coming. And look at that chart on the way out and see if your name is on it or not. Maybe you thought it was. Okay, thank you.